Councilmember Cosarelli? Here. Kennedy? Here. Longo? Here. Nattari?
Here.
Robel?
Here.
Strumelberg? Present. Mayor Kimball?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
presentation from the motorcycle law and Morris will put the motorcycle law
I just want, before we do this proclamation, the motorcycle mall was voted as one of the top 50 dealerships in the United States by Power Sports businesses. So tonight we are honoring.
Now they're the top. That's been updated. They are number one.
Now you're number one. You're number one in the country, so that's why we are honoring you.
Wow.
And before we lead you to this proclamation, I do want to say, I want to thank John and his family. You could have gone anywhere. You could have had your business on 46, on 23. You could have gone anywhere, and you decided to stay in Belleville, and you have a beautiful place here in Belleville. We thank you for staying there. Thank you.
You want to say something?
I'd like to say thank you to everybody to the town. My grandfather, he was here, to be very proud since he come of our dealership and when he started. And I'm very grateful and appreciative of everybody here for your allowed us to do our town. Thank you so much.
Thank you for staying.
Whereas Motorcycle Law recently took home the biggest award from the industry publication, Deal Newsers, as the 2014 Dealer of the Year. And whereas Motorcycle Law was also voted as one of the top 100 dealerships in the U.S. and received the Best Dealership Event Award at a December 4, 2014 gala during the Dealer News International Power Sports Dealer Expo in Chicago. And whereas Motorcycle Law has had a motorcycle presence in Belleville, New Jersey since 1977, when the founder, John Red Resignetti Sr. and his son, John Resignetti Jr., moved their businesses from Halsey Street in Newark to 165 Washington Avenue in Belleville, which they've outgrown by 2007. And whereas a business increased, John Jr. called upon his son, John L.R. Resignetti III, to run the day-to-day operations, and LJ enjoys the same diehard passion as an owner and true enthusiasm that his father and grandfather still have to this day. And whereas in 2012, Motorcycle Law moved to its premier location at 655 Washington Avenue, Belleville, New Jersey, and is thriving as an active part of the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Municipal Council of the Township of Belleville congratulate Motorcycle Law for being voted as one of the top 50 dealerships in the U.S. by Power Sports businesses, and from Dealer News being voted as one of the top 100 dealerships in the U.S., receiving the Best Dealership Event Award and being presented with the well-deserved biggest award, 2014 Dealer of the Year. Congratulations.
I talked to John Jr. He's on his way up the Parkway, so LJ gets to do the honors.
No, we got a haircut. Dressed a little more appropriate. Thank you guys. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
We're gonna make a presentation to now to Ann Morris.
Yeah.
It's your pleasure. Ann?
Ann Morris is a Belleville resident, but she's been selected for the Nutley Irish Parade as the Deputy Grand Marshal. So the council is going to give her a little resolution. I'll read it from here so everyone can hear me first. Whereas Ann Morris has been selected as the Deputy Grand Marshal by the Belleville Irish American Association and the Nutley Irish American Association for the 37th Annual St. Patrick's Day Parade to be held on Saturday, March 7, 2015. Whereas Anne Morris was born in Kells, County Meath, Ireland, and emigrated to the United States of America in 1961 when she married the late Michael Morris in 1963, settling in Belleville. Whereas Anne and Michael raised 4 children and 10 grandchildren, with whom Anne proudly passes on her Irish heritage. Whereas Anne Morris is active with St. Peter's Church, the Belleville Irish American Association, the Nutley Irish American Alliance, and the Giblin Association. And whereas the Mayor and Municipal Council of the Township of Belleville find it fitting to congratulate Anne Morris. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of the Township of Belleville extend their congratulations to Anne Morris for being selected as the 2015 Deputy Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Yeah, speech.
I'd just like to thank everybody, and the Irish, and everybody here tonight, but everybody in Belleville. My family. Regular meeting of February 10th.
Make a motion.
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Abstain.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg? Yes. Mayor Kibble?
I report that we will be receiving the regulators, which have been long overdue, this week on Thursday. Preparations are being made at the Public Works Yard to store the new regulators, which are bronze, and hopefully they'll be installed, weather permitting, next week or week after. With that, the regulators are designed to control the water pressure throughout the township, and we are hoping that we will have a limit of water main breaks throughout the community. That's it.
No?
I would like to bring up again about our Silver Lake Firehouse. At the last meeting, it was brought up that we're not sure what we're going to do. We had the $800,000 to $900,000 that would have given us a firehouse, and that was declined. And now, I was told at the last meeting that now they're thinking of not renovating the Silver Lake Firehouse. A lot of my residents come up to me, and I'd like to know what we're going to do. And if they're not going to renovate it, what are they going to do with the money? I think we need a firehouse there. We had another fire on Franklin Street. So I would like some answers on that. Also, I noticed on the I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, my apologies.
I noticed on the website that we have our agenda listed, which I think is very good. I just think we should include some of the ordinances and some of the resolutions so that people that have any interest would know beforehand to come. Also on the website, I've noticed that the order of us between the mayor and the deputy mayor and first ward, second ward, it's all out of order. So I would suggest that we look into that. That's it. Kevin, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, in response to last week's council meeting 2 weeks ago, I did have a meeting with the fire chief. He'll be meeting in my office this coming Thursday morning. I was going to welcome him to come to this council meeting as discussed at the last meeting, but as you can see, we have a full agenda. Private session would not permit it. So we have every intention of having him come in pre-session next meeting to address the issues and questions that the council members have.
My question is, how many firemen were hired the last round of guys?
Oh, we had a grant last year. We hired 7 new firemen.
Okay.
7 new
So if
firemen.
we have 7 new firemen, I'm sure that we can man the Silver Lake Firehouse, because I do understand it's a 24-hour shift, is that true?
Yeah, and we have to maintain staffing levels. We have had some retirements taking place since the hire.
How many retirements?
Well, at the moment, 1. Prior to the hires, there were some retirements as well. So a lot of those positions were replacement positions. But
Okay.
the chief will address the
So
staffing
it will
issues.
be at the next meeting.
He's been invited, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't want to jinx it, but I think this is the first week that we don't have snow in the forecast. I just wanted to thank the DPW for a good season. Yeah, I know it was tough out there with the cold and the bitter, and it wasn't melting. You know, we usually rely on the sun a little bit, and you guys really did a good job this year.
Yes, you did.
Kev, along those same lines, do you have your soul?
At the moment, yes.
Okay, that's my second thing. Get in touch with the county.
A
about
point of order, are the
stretch-
microphones on up there?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not close enough.
I didn't hear you said at the
I
end.
apologize.
Well, it's so high and you're laid back that the people
There we go.
can't hear.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I apologize. The other thing, between Geralman and Belleville Avenue, on Franklin Avenue there, the potholes are just getting horrendous. We have fire trucks coming out of there, we have people back and forth, so if you could contact the county and see if they can help us out a little bit.
In response to the paving of Geralman, because that's a street that we're.
No, just Franklin, it's Franklin Avenue. Geralman we know has got to be paved, that's a given. I'm just saying, Franklin Avenue, between Geralman and Belleville Avenue, right by Soho Hospital there.
Okay.
He's got fire trucks coming out. I hate to see anything happen to them.
I'd like to thank the Public Works, not only for the snow removal in there, but there has been numerous water breaks. They've been called out all times of the night and all types of weather. They did a tremendous job, and I believe, because I don't know if we have a figure, but they did save the town quite a bit of money by privatizing that type of work and not going out to
I discussed that issue with Mr. Harris today. He presented me some cold facts from what other municipalities expend on these services. And it's my experience that a small water main break could cost upwards of $10,000. So the water department has done an outstanding job in providing this coverage. We had a break, for example, on Monday, President's Day, sub-zero conditions last Monday. Everyone remembers last Sunday night as well as last night, -4 degrees with a wind chill, -20 degrees. Our water department was called in and they were taken to the task and they did not let us down. They took care of the water main break responsibly. We're not alone. Verona recently had 5 water main breaks in the past 4 or 5 days. It's unfortunate with the older systems and the extreme temperatures, they are very common. But I'm confident that we're getting outstanding service from the water main, from the DPW and water department when it comes to the water main breaks, and the value is there as well for us.
I also want to thank the Public Works Department for this winter, a very good job that you have done. When I leave early in the mornings. I leave at 6:30 to go to work. I go through Belleville, I'm okay. When I go to some of the neighboring towns, that's when I start to say, maybe our DPW guys can show them how to do the job in some of our neighboring towns. But I do thank you very, very much. And again, you're out there. You were out there in Hurricane Sandy when we were all huddled in our homes, so thank you very much.
Throughout the town. The Department of Public Works also mans the warming station until the CERT department kicks in or the police and fire department kick in. And we, as we all know, we have had to call for a warming center quite often this winter.
Communications.
Received from St. Valley Sewage Commission a check in the amount of $8,294.54 for the municipal rebate incentive program. A request received from the Belleville Little League for permission to conduct tag days on March 7th, 14th, and 21st at local businesses.
Make a motion, approve it.
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg?
Yes.
Mayor Kibble?
When's the public hearing?
Ordinance number 1 for public hearing, an ordinance authorizing the purchase and/or acceptance of claims of real property known as Block 2301, Lot 1, commonly known as 11 Franklin Avenue in the Township of Belleville, New Jersey, from Roche Diagnostic Corporation.
Make a motion, open this public hearing.
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg?
Yes.
Mayor Kimball?
Yes.
Mayor, if I may introduce Mr. Ray to the governing body, and I just want to let the audience know that he's here. Mayor, members of the governing body, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, at my invitation, James Ray, Jim Ray, of the firm of McElroy Deutsch Mulvaney, is present, seated here in the front row, and has been assisting the township in negotiating the contract for the projected conveyance of this property from Roche to the township of Belleville. The negotiations are ongoing. As a matter of fact, there was a fairly extensive phone conference today, which involved the mayor, the manager, myself, Mr. Ray, on our end, as well as Roche's Jersey Council, their general counsel worldwide, and also their chief financial officer out of California, Mr. Mario Torres. These negotiations have gone on now for several months, and the governing body and all of you should be concerned with the potential impact of certain environmental conditions on that property. With that in mind, one of the keystone figures of the negotiation in order for the township to get that property is the continuation of the LSRP, the licensed site remediation professional, that they have been using on that site, Langen Engineering, a gentleman by the name of Nick DeRose, who's very, very familiar with the site, and he's familiar with the conditions. He gave the township, myself, the manager, and Mr. Ray, certain representations with respect to environmental conditions on the land. In addition to that, our own environmental consultant, Robert Zelli from the Mazer firm, is also very, very familiar with that site, and he has been in an ongoing basis, I guess for the last 5 years or so, evaluating the environmental situation on that site. The site consists of approximately 19 acres. You're all familiar with it. You're familiar where it is. It's something that would be a wonderful thing, we think, for the township of Belleville, but the negotiations have not been without their difficulty. Mr. Ray has expertise in negotiating deals like this. What the main concern of the township is not only getting the land, but seeing if we could obtain money from the company in order to remediate. And that has been accomplished, we think, within the guidelines. I guess when this is open for public discussion, we can go into not every detail with regard to this potential conveyance because there is still some confidentiality. But it kind of breaks down like this. They're going to give us the land. They're going to give $5 million. About $3.9 million is, according to the experts, sufficient to remediate whatever conditions are on the property. In exchange for that, what Roche wants is to be excused and indemnified from any kind of litigation downstream should an environmental issue arise. And that's kind of why we've had these studies done to take our best shot, our best informed shot as to whether or not there are really conditions there that are alarming. As of this point, we don't believe that there are, and I believe that's what the documentary evidence reveals. What the township is anticipating, and of course this is subject to a final contract, would be in turn to make a developer responsible to do that remediation on the property. So with that having been said, I think you opened this for public discussion and questions. And just a second, please. So that will be through the chair. And if Mr. Ray can be of assistance, I'm going to turn it over to you if you feel appropriate.
Stand by you. Sir? Okay. Yeah, we're open.
Sir, you used the
I'm sorry,
word.
would you, your name and address?
Sorry,
I
Drew
didn't
Pearson,
hear.
Hampton Street, Belleville. You used the words evaluators, full sense, or evaluation for Roche and Belleville. Has the phase one, phase two environmental paid for, and have the results of those been made public to substantiate the 3.9 million to clear up the property?
Well, I can't speak to what has become public, but there has been a series of investigations over the years, phase two type work, groundwater sampling, soil sampling. The site has been nearly completely delineated, which means they've identified where the soil contamination is and where the groundwater contamination is. So there's been a very extensive phase two work and cost estimates done by both Langen on behalf of Roche and Mazer on behalf of the township.
So why would we limit ourselves to that 3.9 million if in the event somebody made a mistake?
Well, the township is going to get $5 million in total. Right now, the estimate with very conservative contingencies built into it, 20% contingencies built into that $3.9 million number. That $3.9 million would be set aside for remediation. And the town would get the remaining $1.1 million in cash. Part of it would be at closing, $500,000, and the balance would be held in an escrow account until the property is sold to a redeveloper.
Has there been any prior evaluations over the last few years? I've heard things that it could be as much as $20 million for remediation.
Well, I don't know what was discussed in the past, but there is an assumption in the remediation estimates that the property is going to be redeveloped for commercial purposes, not residential, and that most of the site is going to be capped with buildings and parking lots. So there's an assumed redevelopment of the property. We all hope it's not going to sit there vacant. Somebody's going to take this beautiful piece of property and develop it into office, retail, and that type of thing on top of the property.
Right. Only if the property ends up being cleaned up, which is to be a question.
Well, the redevelopment actually is part of the remedy in a situation like this. The parking lots and the buildings will cap the soil contamination that's in place, as opposed to digging it out of the ground, because it would be a cost negative to be able to try to do that. So that's a very typical scenario in what they call brownfield redevelopment, where a contaminated site is redeveloped. The contamination can be left under DEP and US EPA rules. The contamination can be left in the soil, covered by buildings and parking lots, and where necessary in landscaped areas, there may be a requirement for a foot or more of clean fill on top of the soil contamination. So that's the basic gist of how the site would be redeveloped and remediated.
So would you require there to be a full phase two before finalizing such a contract?
Well, DEP requires it.
Right.
So a technical remedial investigation report has not been required to be submitted by DEP at this point.
Right, I would say would the county require that?
Yes, but most of the requirements for remedial investigation have already been done. The only thing that hasn't occurred yet is that because the time requirements for DEP haven't been kicked in yet, 90% of the remedial investigation work is done. The only thing that hasn't been done is a report to compile it and submit it to DEP. So what has been evaluated by both Langen on behalf of Roche and Mazer on behalf of the township are these various 3-foot-high stack of soil and groundwater and other sampling at the site that has been compiled over the last, I don't know how many years time we've been working on it. 5 years, probably a little more.
Yeah, at least. You know, just to throw something out there also, anecdotally, and I'm not going to bet my life on this, but probably Roach had nothing to do with with whatever conditions exist on the land now. Whatever conditions exist on the land probably were there when they made the purchase, which I believe was in 1975 or 1976. So whatever conditions are there now have been there for at least 40 years. And you know, unfortunately for Roach, after they purchased, the laws changed, and they're in the chain of remediation sources. But they want to give the township an opportunity by giving us the land and giving us the money to take care of it, and them avoiding downstream liability. That's what they want to do. And
But we want to put the risk on the town. And my point is, being what Roche is, a very big company, why wouldn't it hurt them to have a larger slush fund just in case if the risk doesn't fall back to the town? 10 million, and if you don't use it, they get it back.
Well, I don't know
Some
if
sort of
this-
slush
I don't
fund.
know if this answers your question, but there's a huge potential benefit for the town here to shift all of this responsibility to a redeveloper, and that's the intention. So the township hopefully is gonna hold the property, title to the property for a short period of time until a redeveloper comes along. The redeveloper will be given the benefit of the money that's set aside, 3.9 or whatever we end up negotiating for remediation. And then the town could sell the property for above that and make a profit. That's the concept.
Gary Hinton, 307 Fairwood Avenue. It seems that everybody wants to unload the burden of the responsibility here. Every time that you talk about the Roach property, they bought it, they shouldn't be held liable because they didn't do it. Why the hell would we want to take the responsibility for this if it shifted to the town?
well, what we want is the land. That's a valuable piece of real estate. There is another option here. The option is just to let them keep their land.
And let them
And there you go. Then it remains a vacant site for however long it is.
It's better than the burden the taxpayers of Belleville with the cleanup. Why would we want to take that burden, that risk?
Well, what we've tried to do, Garrett, is minimize that risk. There's no doubt that there's a risk.
Well, if it's a minimize it, let them sell it to the contractors. Why did the town got to get in the middle of that?
The town doesn't have to get in the middle of that, but here is the big reason that we're happy to be there. They're giving us almost 19 acres, giving it to the township. So that's kind of like a big gift. I don't want to sound maudlin and say that they're trying to be good corporate neighbors, but really that's what they are. They had a presence here. They closed their operations quite some time ago, and they presented this. This has been ongoing for about 5 years. That we've had discussions with them, tax appeals, and then possibly getting this particular piece of real estate titled to the township for redevelopment. And that's going to be up to the governing body. Whether or not they want to take the chance, take the property, and take the responsibility. That's guarantees in life are pretty good. We'd all like to be guaranteed to live, till we're 100 years old. We hope you do.
Nobody gives something away for nothing.
Kevin,
Nobody
could you
gives
tell
towards
us,
in the mouth.
could you tell us what the value of that piece of property would be if we put it on the market?
Well, we had the land appraised, I believe it was in 2013, and the land was valued at over $13 million, assumed clean.
And then they always evaluate these cleanups at a certain price, and every time that you come into a cleanup like that, it's always way above.
Well, look at it this way, Mr. Hinton. If the land has a value of $13 million assumed clean, then we're gonna get another $5 million. So you add that to it. That's the benefit of what we're getting for $1 from the owner of the property currently. Okay? And on top of that, we would have the ability, correct me if I'm wrong, but to transfer the environmental trust in exchange for money for sale of land. That's right.
We're talking about capping, if capping is not cleaning it up.
Well,
And then the question comes into the groundwater, like we have down at the property down in the valley.
you can look at other commercial sites similar to this throughout the state of New Jersey. McCarty, Bayonne, Harrison, many commercial sites like this that have been capped and redeveloped. It's the standard in the state right now. Okay, that's the new trend in brownfield redevelopment.
And DEP will only allow capping if the contaminants that are in the soil are not going to migrate into the groundwater. So there's various remediation standards. One of them is called the impact to groundwater standard for soils. I don't want to bore you guys with all this detail, but you have to be able to show that the contaminants in the soil do not exceed this impact to groundwater. So if the soil contaminants were at levels where they're going to impact the groundwater, then they would have to be removed. You can't just cap them. So as part of this remedy, there are some what they call hot spots throughout the site, very small areas where pockets of soil contamination is going to be removed because those pockets would impact the groundwater.
And they're gonna remove them?
Yeah, we are, or the redeveloper is.
Or the
So
town of Belleville will be impacted?
the intention here is to shift
Once
over.
you transfer that over to the town, now the town's gonna negotiate with these contractors, and they're all gonna know about this situation, and they're gonna be looking for handouts just like every other developer. Tax break, this, that, and the other thing.
Well, there's
I
gonna
don't
be
see it.
a long time frame before active remediation is required. There's gonna be steps before that, and during that time period, the township is gonna be trying to sell the property.
Why wouldn't most do the selling to a private contractor instead of trying to sift it over to the town? I just don't understand that.
They can.
Why don't
And they can, and they're a big company. And if we don't want it, they will. Period. It's really that simple. They say, look, we think we're doing something nice for you. We've gone as far as we can go. We're giving you 5 million and almost 19 acres. If you don't want it, no one's forcing you to take it. 4 votes up there, and
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Are we receiving taxes on this property now?
Yes, we are.
How much?
I believe the property is assessed at $2 million, taxes just a little over $60,000.
What? How much taxes do
A
you?
little over $60,000 annually.
60,000.
That was as a result of a tax increase.
No building, right?
No,
It's
it's
vacant.
vacant land.
So if we take it over, we lose that 60,000 a year.
We would lose from the day of the closing going forward, so assuming it would be in half of the year, we would lose $30,000.
Right, so as long as we own it, there'll be no taxes. And the way taxes are increasing every year, it'll be more and more that we will not be receiving.
It will become an exempt property when the municipality takes over.
I'm pleading with this council, and Mr. Hinton said it pretty well, which I was gonna say. But we've got examples in our own town that it's an unknown factor, an unknown dollar amount, what's gonna happen here. Look at the Walker Kitty side, how it went out for years. You got the old gas station property on Rutgers and Main Street. My wife's boss owned it. He had it cleaned up. They thought it was cleaned up. Someone bought it, got approval from the zoning board to put 2 two-family houses on there. It was contaminated, they couldn't do it. It's still empty. You know how many years that is empty? All over the state, you've got problems like this because it's an unknown quantity until you actually go into there. I don't know why we're accepting liability. In this morning's record, or yesterday morning, I forget, I wish I had the article out, there's in one of the, Elmwood Park or Garfield, one of the towns up there is a contaminated site. They're capping all. What happened, the contamination leaks underground, blocks and blocks away under residential homes. So this is another unknown. This is a possibility that could happen. Once again, I tell you, I served 18 years on the Safe River Coalition. We were involved in many of these contaminated sites, and they just went on forever. Some of them we tried to develop, we had to walk away from them, even though we got large money. Now, Belleville, the municipal council, what's our budget? 55 million something? So you're a $55 million corporation. Roche is a big company, they're probably billion-dollar corporation. Let them sit with the liability. We're collected, we're not losing anything right now, we're getting $60,000 a year, you're gonna raise our taxes, next year we're gonna get more money from them. Let them find a developer. The other thing, and again, I keep coming here, I don't know if you people read the papers. The demand for office space and retail space is diminishing. Just, there was a big article about this new threat from ISIS that they're gonna attack our malls. More and more online buying is taking place. In my own family, my niece and my sister were over the other night, and they said they're doing everything online now. They're deathly afraid to go to the malls with their children and all that. So you gotta look at what's really happening here, you know, and why would you assume an unknown liability, and this is, both the expert here and Mr. Murphy says, we, you know, could be what we assume is 3.9 or 5 million. But why, when we're getting revenue, are we going to put the overburdened taxpayers of Belleville on an unknown track to what they're doing? I mean, what the expense is going to be down the road. So I plead, you know, I'm pleading with you, let some rational minds, and like Mr. Murphy said, we need the 4 votes to kill this thing. Let Roche handle it. They hand a big corporation, they got billions and millions at their disposal. Let them and the DEP take care of it, and let them find a developer. Because it's not going to work out for us.
Jeff Mattingly, 56 Walnut. This sounds very parallel to what's happened down in the valley at the Walter Kitty property, now owned by Route 21 Associates. They also are developed for commercial and was not going to be residential. They had vast amounts of soil have to be remediated by order of the DEP. We eventually, after many years, came down to a no further action letter from them, or the owner came down to a no further action on that soil. Then they found groundwater issues, which are now being charted and dealt with all around that property. There's more than 100 wells, permanent wells, in place, and I think another 50, 60 treatment wells. My business is across the street from it. I have had an ongoing seasonal relationship with various contractors there using my building, bathroom, and water and such. They're treating the groundwater, but it did leach off the land onto Roosevelt, and it did affect people's homes. Our former town manager's home is, in fact, I think, one of the real hot spots with the groundwater contamination. I think that the Finkelsteins who own the property are somewhere between 6 and 8 million into remediation at this point, which they plan to hold Walter Kitty responsible for legally, and I think Walter Kitty expects that, if not already occurring. When pollution is created by someone who no longer is there or present, and I understand this may go back further than 40 years, there's no one to recoup that money from. It's going to come from you. I find it intriguing that a $13 million clean land and another $5 million, $18 million, should certainly cover it if it isn't extensive. Now, when you say that there's been significant charting of the pollution, until you bring that to the DEP and they give you a plan of action, it's all pie in the sky. Nobody really knows what they're going to require. And this, in encapsulating the soils in the Kitty property, was not allowed for commercial development. I very much want to see the Juergens property developed commercially. I would not want to see residential standards applied to the remediation. I also know that as they excavated that soil, they triangulated it with readers that measured the gases coming off as they removed it. So not all pollutants require going down into the ground in order to harm you. They can come up through the concrete of a building and become a containment for those gases and create liability down the road.
Vapor intrusion.
Vapor intrusion, thank you. Even though concrete's porous.
This site was evaluated for vapor intrusion. There was no vapor intrusion risk either on the site or off of the site.
Really? That's very good. That's encouraging. And the groundwater contaminants, are they known to be somewhat central in hot spots Or are they near borders where residential areas occur?
Most of it is limited to the site. My recollection is, I don't have the maps with me, but there might be a very small portion where it's gone off the site. But it's very deep, and they've evaluated the vapor intrusion risk between the groundwater. So when you have certain types of contaminants in the groundwater, they're volatile, which means they could become
Mixed.
They change from water to a gas, okay? From a liquid to a gas, and they can come up through the soils into basements. So that risk has been evaluated at this site.
It has, and what was that determination?
It was determined that there is no risk from a vapor intrusion standpoint.
Really?
No trichloroethylene or anything like that.
No, please, yeah.
Well, there are chlorinated solvents.
No, not, we had trichloroethylene.
Trichloroethylene.
We had trichloroethylene down in Kitty.
Specific to Zeb Parts Cleaner, which was done
Well,
heavily
there
in
may be
one spot.
trichloroethylene on this site, so you know. One of the, either perchloroethylene or trichloroethylene or both, which are very prevalent solvents that are all over New Jersey. So the concentrations at this site, I will say, are above the standards. That's why some type of remediation is going to be required. But our consultants have reviewed them, and from my experience as an environmental lawyer and also having a master's degree in environmental science and an undergraduate degree in chemistry, the concentrations at this site, while above standards, the standards are very low. So for trichloroethylene, perchloroethylene in groundwater, most of those standards are 1 part per billion. So it doesn't take a lot of that contaminant in the groundwater to exceed the standard. So the next thing is, well, okay, if you're above standard, what are the impacts on people and the environment? And that's the key point. And DEP over the years have allowed capping. They've allowed, as opposed to active groundwater, trying to pull a contaminated water out of the ground and remediate it, and it gets crazy. So they've said, look, instead of active groundwater remediation, you could use things like classification exception areas. Okay? And that's the kind of concept that would apply to this site. There would be deed restrictions for the contaminants in the soil. There would be a classification exception area, but there are no potential impacts to occupants of that land from the contamination either in the soil or the groundwater.
Right, wouldn't typical developer also include vapor intrusion in the plans submitted?
Yeah, as belts and suspenders for this site, the estimates that we're talking about factored in a vapor barrier, which is basically, to simplify, a plastic liner that would be put under the foundations and buildings to prevent any vapors from getting into the building. So that was put in, but the vapor risk at this site is slim to none, based upon the depth of the groundwater contamination and the concentrations.
And this would require redevelopment, you're aware, right? And that is certainly something that is not necessarily something that Belleville is adept in historically. And you know, that's going to require some professionals that we certainly would need to employ in order to give good, adequate guidance. And it sounds very intriguing. It sounds like this is on the low end of pollution scales. It sounds like it would restrict it definitely to commercial activity. Otherwise, costs would double, I'm sure, with what the DEP would require. But I do know that they remediated a couple, maybe almost football field size areas on the property, 2 of them, on the Kitty property, and it was somewhere around 5 to 6 million. So that was what the DEP said.
Just a quick question. On that property, how much of it is clean with no contamination whatsoever? Do we know that?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd get back to you with an answer to that question. You'd have to look at it both from soil and groundwater. Kind of 2 different perspectives.
Is any of it clean in the parcel?
Oh, yeah. A lot of the contaminants, in my recollection, is historic fill. So, you know, years ago when they wanted to develop a site, they'd bring fill in from all over the place. And the fill was contaminated with metals.
That's what I was thinking.
Through the chair, if I could just make a comment in response to Mr. Mattingly. about the township and the history of redevelopment at this location. This location in the 1800s was part of the Hendricks copper mine location. And also Hendricks family owned a lumber yard in that vicinity. And the joint effort with the township of Belleville, actually the town of Belleville at that time, and the county and the Juergens Company, that's when they got together and they redeveloped that site at one point. Change is inevitable, and obviously we saw what happened. Juergens sold to Roche, and now...
But we're talking long time ago, right?
Well, yeah, but, you know...
When it was originally developed as copper and so on and so forth, so.
Right.
Thank
The
you.
site has gone through a few cycles already.
Jerry Delgertia, 8 Grove Street. I have a number of questions on this. Mr. Esposito, how much would this be worth in its present state without being cleaned?
Well, again, we've had it appraised with cleanup, okay, as clean, for $13.5 million. All indication of cleanup is approximately 3.7, 3.9 million.
But what would it be if it wasn't cleaned up? Because the council, well, according to Mr. Murphy, is looking to push the cleanup onto the new buyer. The new buyer is gonna wanna know what it's worth without being cleaned up. He's not gonna pay you $13 million
Of course not.
if it's not cleaned up. And that's, you just said you wanna shift the responsibility to the buyer.
So it was 3.9 million with the two estimates. We're still making 10, 12 million, and we got that $5 million in it, or $4 million is gonna wind up in escrow, that we're gonna be able to recoup. That Juergens is putting up for us.
But the reason, Juergens or Roche?
I'm sorry.
Oh, now,
Going back.
the reason I'm bringing this up, isn't this not an area that's already designated in need of redevelopment? It has been. And wasn't there a developer originally assigned to this?
There was designated David Mack as a developer. He chose not to proceed.
Did you say why?
He did not believe that with the way Roach wanted to, he wanted to put residential there. And really that was the reason. He wanted to put residential on the site. And Roach, I mean, as Mr. Ray indicated, and as you probably know, if you're gonna have residential on the site, that's a whole different cleanup bill. That's a whole different universe. So while they, I think, want to give us the land, they didn't want to be responsible to clean down to a residential standard. There was quite a discussion about that, a lengthy discussion. We had pretty serious discussions about that. And neither, the governing body would have, I believe, if Roach said it's okay, gone along with it. But Roach was not going to do it. They were not going to do it. So, you know, you couldn't force them to.
Now, if we can't find a developer who wants to develop this for commercial reasons, then what do you do?
Well, what we do is if the property is generating $60,000 a year, we've already been paid 8 years in advance. So hopefully sometime within that time period, we'll get a developer. I don't think there's a rush to get a developer in there. I think the key thing would be to get the right developer.
Okay, now.
It's a good piece of property.
I'm not arguing that point, it's a big piece of property. My question is, if this ordinance is voted on tonight, is this an ordinance to buy the property?
This is an ordinance authorizing the governing body to do that. The contract has not yet been finalized. That would be like step 2.
That's because you're still in negotiation.
Pardon me?
That's because you're still in negotiations.
That's right.
Now, let
But
me
we're to that point. We're really to the point where they need an answer from Belleville now.
if they're interested.
Yeah, they know we're interested. They know the township is interested, but they want some finality to this. It's been going on for a while.
So now, what happens if the negotiations break down?
Then they keep the property and continue paying their taxes.
So this is not a requirement for the town to buy it?
No.
What would be the process after tonight for the town to buy it?
Well,
Would there be a public hearing, what?
There would be a resolution approving the contract to accept the conveyance or purchase, however that's gonna be designated, and the contract would be a part of that resolution.
Okay, now the reason I brought this up, this thing that I started in the beginning, is because of another area in need of redevelopment, which was the old school number 1, of which there was 2 bids brought in, one that they would clean it up at less money, and one that you would clean it up at more money. And then if they weren't satisfied, they could still pull out of the deal. That was in the contract. I saw the contract.
No, what that contract was is that the township would demolish and absorb the demolition, but that the environmental would go to the purchaser. And that's
Not that I remember in the contract.
Chair, you want to stick to this ordinance that's on?
Well, I'm just saying, that's why I'm bringing it
I don't
up.
want to
It's
go back.
comparison.
That's the way it is.
All right, okay. Thank you.
Quick conclusions, quick questions. Didn't the planning board already do a redevelopment to the village property? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Redevelopment study was done and approved by the planning. Okay, perfect.
Phyllis Frantantoni, I think that we should leave the property to Roach, let them sell it and handle everything, and we shouldn't become a real estate agent.
Thank you.
Have a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg?
Yes.
Mayor Kimball?
Yes.
Make a motion to move into adoption.
Second.
Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
No.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg?
Before I vote, I'd like to make a few comments. Number one, if we can get a reliance letter from the consultants that the cleanup won't go over $5 million, I would go through it in a minute. We cannot guarantee that. 90% of jobs go over budgets. I spoke to an environmental consultant too. We are exposing the town to a potential liability on the backs of the taxpayers of this town. Do we have in our possession an environmental study done by Roche to determine the degree of contamination and who has looked over this testing? Residents in the area may get some type of smell and we would be responsible for it. Will this affect Nanina's, the hospital, the medical building? We have not gone down any further. How do we know these things are not going to happen? Hoffman and Roche should definitely do the cleanup. Why won't they, if they're going to give us $5 million, let them clean it up for $5 million if that's what it's going to cost, and then they'll give us the property. I don't see, that's a no-brainer to me. Even after 10 or 20 years, if we own the property, we are responsible. The exposure that this is going to cost with the municipality, it could be for years and way millions of dollars. Environmental cleanups come in all the time, not on budget. Who will pay for all this? I was talking about vapor intrusion too, but you're saying to me that there's no vapor intrusion. You can guarantee that.
That's what the consultants say.
Okay, well.
I'm just a lawyer.
I'm asking, okay, so that's the guarantee that I want to make. They need a permit with Passaic Valley Sewage. Look what's happening in Clifton. There's 200 to 400 houses that may have contamination. Potential for lawsuits. What is your answer going to be when the cleanup exceeds $5 million to the residents of this town? Roche is very intelligent in this matter. They give us the $5 million, sell it to the town, and they're gone forever. But the liability will stay with us. So with that in mind, I definitely vote, and I do want development. I am not against development. That's my ward. I would love to have it. But I definitely vote no.
Mayor Kimball?
I definitely vote yes.
Ordinance
Ready, shall make a motion to open public participation.
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo? Yes. Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg?
Yes?
I can hold 25 minutes now.
Yeah. Okay, remember you're on video.
getting back to the North End redevelopment, which I'm sure maybe a lot of other people, or at least some other people, will be interested about. I mean, where do you start with this? A 50-story building, all these references to the waterfront that can handle that kind of development, has infrastructure for it. We have zip, none of it, nada. They want to open up a rail line to make it possible, a commuter line. With one rail, how do you come back? No, I mean, you know what you're talking about? You're talking about creating... Yeah, everybody goes one way. So what you're talking about is a lot more eminent domain along the way to take land to create sidings. You're never going to get a second rail. So you'd be hanging off on the side for waiting for the green light. And the fact of the matter is that this is contingent, as was pointed out at the planning board, to that scale development. Without the rail line, even the 20-story building was off, according to Mr. Reagan. And so the fact of the matter is, you light up that railway, you basically just stopped Washington Avenue. Nobody else has a rail line one short block away from their main avenue. That's insanity. And when he talks about that they could handle the traffic, you're going to do widen the bridge over the Passaic River, create new exits onto 21. You can't get on and off of that highway right there. You're not just affecting Belleville, you're affecting the south end of Nutley and all people coming east to get to New York City to the highways. I mean, but you know, even just to argue the logistics about this, it's mind-blowing. I have, you heard that the key to all of this is changing the zoning. Because in changing the zoning, now you can secure urbanization funding from the federal government, which will take this all completely out of your hands. You will cut a deal and it will be done, and that is the only reason why a private bank would consider, when he talks about trying to attract funding, without that federal assurance that lays a liability off on us, you will never get a private bank to develop this, which tells me, bad deal for Belleville. You know, so now, in my opinion, the planning board sent you back a hot potato because they obviously didn't do anything with it, even to some degree promoted it, except for a few who spoke out against various concerns. You know, the planner talks about millennials, his own children coming this way. Millennials are childbearing age. They talk about existing studies, but the millennials entering the childbearing age seeking apartments is a whole new concept. So how do you gauge that? There are no studies that are going to show what they've done by way of starting families. And then the assurance was, well, and if they had children, when they came to school age, they'd leave. Well, thank you very much. So this is your partnership with Belleville, that you want to create a city and a town, and then when it comes time to really be the partner, you're out of here? Foreign investment? Residential investment. All this conversation about Montclair. Montclair has 20% debt service on their annual budget. 20%. The average taxes now, average in Montclair, are $24,000. They are in major trouble, and what are they doing? Digging deeper. Let's build more high-rise apartments. They've run out of their water sources. They're now looking for the, the north side of the Wanacue. They already get from the south. And they've got 3 artesian wells that had to be aerated due to benzene infiltration. They got problems all over the place. The parking authority that came along with that heavy development, apartment development, $260 million missing that the township's liable for. Sloppy bookkeeping. Sloppy bookkeeping. That's where this sort of debt comes from. This is overambitious, is an understatement by a wide margin. You know, we are not equipped. We have an ambitious master plan that was recently by, manager Victor Canning, ambitious. 8 stories, I think, on Washington. No one has touched it. No one, the motorcycle mall, God bless him for staying, really. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, this is a good, noteworthy thing. Although he's about to have his view of New York completely obscured. He'll be staring at the side of a building. You have a beautiful prospectus that I've seen that has a beautiful front end of a 10-story building. The man just said he wants 20. So the prospectus is one thing, the reality is something different. We learned that at Essex Park, didn't we? You know, you hear nice things from developers, and then it's sold, they're gone, and it's a whole new ball game with the remainder. And we are liable. You come down East Center Street and look at those condos that they built. What is that, 2.5, 3 years maybe in construction? They're empty. Nobody's there. All the demographics of, yeah, they're flocking to, you know, it's a nice development. Nobody's buying it. Nobody. Now, in high-rise, yeah, maybe that would be different. Who wants a high-rise? I mean, that's insanity. In Belleville? Come on, we don't have the infrastructure. Want to finish up, Jeff, please?
Yeah, I would. I could go on for a week, and I will when this gets back to the planning board. When professional, I would like to remind the council, to remind the President Venero of the planning board, that when professional testimony is given, there is no limit to the amount of time that the public can respond. As I was for 5 minutes, given 5 minutes over 2 hours of testimony, and cut off by our friendly lawyer, Mr. Gassion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, first I'd like to count, Mr. Murphy said it last meeting, he said it again tonight, in response to Mr. Del Gershon, that the contract for School One was only to do the demolition, and they would do the cleanup. This is the proposal, I have the actual proposal. Said we're going to do a deposit of $200,000. The balance will be paid upon receiving clear title to the property with all demolition and all cleanup required for the building to be done by seller. Mr. Murphy is wrong again. The seller was the town.
No, Mr. Frantantonio, that was modified. That was modified and executed.
Well, provide the contract, it says.
Yeah, I can.
The other thing, at the last meeting, I forget who asked if the taxes were being paid, and Mr. Esposito says yes. But it wasn't paid by them. Here in December, they were on the tax sale for $6,773. And somebody else paid it. Somebody bought it, gave an $8,000 premium to get that thing there. So, you know, the developer didn't pay the taxes. Somebody else, and I assume now there's a lien on the property for him. So, you know, we got to get our facts straight when we do, and when we hear these quote unquote professionals, that like this guy here tonight, they're given what's called their opinion, and opinions are subject to change and all that. Now, I do want to thank, for rare occasion, I get the opportunity to thank Councilman Kennedy, Lavelle, and Cazarelli for questioning this Northeast redevelopment plan, and there's some serious problems like Jeff just reiterated on there. But in addition, when he was asked, I think by Mr. Lavelle, did you ask him about a pilot? And he said, no, I don't think so. But that's not his testimony. I got the notes of the when he before the planning board, here was the current. Asked about a pilot, he said, well, the way it works is we'll take the current assessment, that is the base that can stretch out 10, 15 years or more. And he then went on to say, Mr. Reagan himself stood up there before the planning board and says, without a pilot, the banks ain't gonna loan us. It's not a possible product. And the pilot, this is the report of Matthew Boxer, was the state controller for the state of New Jersey, which just came out a couple of years ago. New Jersey's municipal tax abatement program, pilot, is pulling critical funding away from school districts and leaving taxpayers to pick up the cost. And another part of there's a whole bunch of bad ramifications for these pilots, but here's just 4 of them. The Office of State Controller report also found that abatements artificially depress the rateable property base in the municipality, leaving neighboring municipalities to shoulder the county tax burden. Number 2, the standards for designating redevelopment areas are loosely applied and rarely reviewed. 3, developers seeking abatements may, without repercussion, overpromise benefits that do not materialize. And 4, information concerning abatement agreement is not published in a transparent manner or centralized location for the public to review and analyze. And the reason for that is the state is lax and they don't oversee what you guys are doing. These are just some of the many problems in this report. Now, in addition to that, as somebody else stated, I brought this up before, I don't know if you, Mr. Mayor, I know you lived here all your life, and the others are your Belleville residents. Did you ever look at a map of Belleville? There's no way to get through Belleville except Belleville Avenue and Girolamo Street. We're fortunate to have the golf course in our town, but it's also a hindrance because other towns, if the main trees, well, you can bob and weed in and out the side trees. You can't do it in Belleville. So that's the only two ways. Now you're going to add 4,500, that's 6,000 developers. And Mr. Bishop, he just said, look at all the parking he's going to give us. He's going to give us tremendous amount of parking, right? There was just an article in the paper about 3 weeks ago that they're going to redo the Park Avenue Bridge because it takes 4 to 5 lights for you to get across that bridge. So now all Mr. Bishop's parking, evidently he's going to produce parking because there's going to be cars to fit in those parking spaces. So now, instead of 4 or 5 lights, will be, you call your boss, so I'll be about 2 hours late for work, I'm going to be waiting to cross the bridge. Also, if any of you go with all the new renovations on Route 3, you ever go down the end of 21 and try to get on Route 3 in the morning? It's an impossible task. So now we're going to ask thousands of more cars because he said, oh, these are going to be New York people who want to come to Jersey, but they want to work in New York. So how are they going to get over the bridge, and how are they getting? The only other way is the North Arlington Bridge. Have you seen a couple of weeks ago they opened the bridge? I go to open my laundrette. Traffic was backed up to past the Walgreens store. Just dead stop, 2 lanes of traffic for close to 45 minutes. So we're going to add another city. The other thing is, Mr. Gassion brings that new development and says, oh, Jersey City, Jersey City. I'm glad he said it. Because, listen, Jersey City, it's a city. We are a township. And there's a reason we call it, because depending on your population in different categories. We cannot put what he's proposing is a city within a township. It's just not feasible. You know, and Mr. Kennedy brought up the colonnade wall, which I had before. That was from my father come home and cab driver in Newark, and oh my God, they're going to build these beautiful luxury apartments in Newark, and then down in front of them, right down to Broad Street, was going to be the Colonnade Mall, upscale mall, all these fancy stores. Now it's 50, 60 years later, and it's now the Colonnade lot, attracting debris and all that. So don't listen to these developers. You know, don't even wait up. Throw them out of town. You know, he's pulled in a lot. He's got New York plates. He don't want to live in New Jersey. He don't want to live in Belleville. So, like I said, 3 of you asked some good questions. I hope you do. You just kill this. The planning board hearing was a farce. Believe me, it was a big farce. First of all, you had one member there who's a police officer. Oh, come on, let's approve it. He was in here. I don't know where he had to go. He had to go to a cup of coffee, had a date or something. Oh, let's get it over. This is just, the council wants us to do it. Check the minutes of the meeting. He kept saying, let's do it. Let's just approve this. Come on, what are we wasting time for? They were supposed to hear it in its entirety. They weren't doing that job. But just look, you know, what's going on. And as far as you can see New York City, I need you walking the yard tomorrow for coffee. You can see New York City skyline from my house. All right? My sister come over the other day, she's amazing. Come out, put the garbage out of my side of it, and I tell them, look at the thing. The World Trade Center, bright as hell, from either my driveway or my alleyway. I can see New York City. My neighbor 2 doors away just in November sold a house. She's got a dormer in her attic. Sits up there, you can see the entire skyline from George Washington Bridge to the Verrazano Bridge there. She reduced her house $50,000 to get rid of it. So what did that New York view do for them? You know? So again, I invite you to come and look at the view from my house and give me a cup of coffee. Roll that down, please. Roll that down.
Carmela Fleischman, Franklin Street. So,
I understand that the chief of the fire department was not here tonight, but next meeting, okay. I find it ironic that a closed firehouse doesn't take precedence over things that may be built in Belleville. You know, a wasting of an hour to an hour and a half on the lovely presentation. You know, these are possibilities. I think a closed firehouse should take precedent. That's the problem we're having now. And if they don't go in and turn off that alarm that is still chiming from a month ago, from the fire, the first fire on Franklin, I'm personally breaking in and chopping the wires. When you walk by the firehouse, you hear the alarm. It's constant.
What did you call about?
I'm sorry?
Who did you call about?
Nope.
We told the police officers right outside, they responded to the fire department.
We told the
Take care of
police,
it.
the night of the
They-
fire, we told the police officers there, I did not get names. And we also told the firefighters.
Disconnected.
Yes, please, thank you.
Michael Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street. I just wanted to address the two concerns that Councilwoman Burke brought up at the beginning of tonight's meeting. Firstly, the provision, the ability to post the ordinances and resolutions, that's going to be forthcoming in the very near future. Underneath the hood of the new website is the ability, at the discretion of the town manager, to authorize other people to write directly to the website so that it's no longer the sole responsibility of a webmaster to update and add content. So I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks to have a meeting with Kelly and to interface her office with the new website. I'm hoping in the very near future, all ordinances going back to the 1800s if necessary, everything can be brought up to speed and all of that data that's in her files can finally be digitized.
That would be wonderful.
Hoping that's going to
Get rid of
happen
all
very
the
soon.
papers that we have.
That's on my agenda list in addition to Kevin and I have already started to work to implement online bill paying, property taxes and utility bills. We're hoping to have all of that in place by the next quarter payments.
And what about the other?
All right, the other thing is the little collage that I have for all the council members. I revamped that over the weekend. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the new
I
website.
was on it last night.
Last night, all right. Right now I have, the way it's set up is Mayor Kimball is got top billing for obvious reasons, then Deputy Mayor Kevin
Yes.
Kennedy,
At the
and
bottom
then,
if you want.
but the other council members are all in alphabetical order.
Mixed up. Just-
I can sort it any way you want. I can sort it by
Well, I
hair
think
color,
you should
eye
sort
color.
it,
or-
first ward, second ward, third ward, fourth ward, instead of second, fourth, 11th,
Well, I just arbitrarily put everyone else in
That's
alphabetical
fine.
order, but if you
That's
want,
fine.
if the council wants me to list
Whatever you-
it by ward number, that's fine, whatever you wish. It'll take me 30 seconds to flip the order
Oh, I
around.
just think it would be in order. The mayor, the deputy mayor, and then it should be, of course, the councilman at large, and then first ward, second ward, third ward, fourth.
As soon as
That's my opinion,
all right,
but
for
of
the
course,
group
that
consensus,
doesn't
I'll,
mean anything.
I'll change the sorting order any way you want. But anyway, that's just a quick update for the website.
Well, I thank you for the agenda, it was a great idea.
My pleasure. I'm hoping with this new website, the stuff underneath the hood, of course, everyone looking at the website only sees the superficial aspect of it, but a lot of the effort to build this new website was putting in the undercarriage, and that is this idea of content management, and that will allow other people to contribute to the website directly. It won't no longer be solely dependent on me to post information. Kevin can authorize Kelly or members of different departments, the DPW, et cetera, to post messages, announcements at their discretion. So there's going to be a lot of additional development. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. This website is going to continue to evolve.
Look at my picture of them filming me.
Sorry. The website's going to continue to evolve over the course of this year. What you're seeing right now, I say that this is version 1.0 of the new website. We'll be undergoing multiple revisions over the next few months. But I just happened to notice the little yellow ducky in front of.
These are my friends on NewJersey.com. This is Chicken Murphy. This is Fruit Loops. This is Zebra 29. And this is Joe. That's my fan.
Brother Ducky, I didn't initially see the connection with NJ.com forum, but
I've been down there, Chicken Murphy. I think Zebra 79 refers to Murphy as Chicken Murphy.
the little yellow ducky reminds me of a little issue I had when I was first putting together the website. I was struggling to find the right yellow to work with the blue. Kevin had asked me to please try to incorporate the township colors with the website design. So I searched long and hard to find the right yellow to work with the blue. And I finally stumbled upon a yellow, and it happened to be called Rubber Ducky Yellow. So I just had to take it upon myself. I changed that to Belleville Freedom Yellow, but that yellow is part of the website. But just wanted to throw that in.
That was an interesting story.
Victor Fucci, 61 Continental. At the last meeting, I couldn't totally understand the man that was talking about the state rivers. The Belleville portion is or is not included in the fee?
It is. That's in the low rate mile.
And regarding the Washington Avenue development, I also have thought about the single lane for the rail station, and I was trying to figure out how they would do that. I believe Mr. Steck mentioned there would be some kind of transportation to the rail station. Do you mean the one that you may build, or do you mean kind of stations of one in the I mean, you have the plans on it. Okay.
They're building it right next to the rocket launcher that's been because we're going to send some people to Belleville to Mars to live with the other ones.
You also mentioned direct access to each one of the ones, so I wasn't sure what they meant by that. A lot of times with developments that are in phases, phase one, which would be the primary money maker, gets done, and then all of a sudden, you never see phase 2, 3, or 4. Not just these people. I'm not an expert, and Mr. Steck is, but I resented the word blight as opposed to area needing redevelopment. To me, blight is like we have half-empty, run-down buildings.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a vacant unit. Also, okay, the other thing, planners, professional planners are hired by the developer. You go out, when you go for your certification to be a zoning board official or whatever, you are taught that you do not necessarily have to believe everything the planner says as the truth. Thank you.
Bring the motion to close the vote.
Very done very short, there was a number of things I want to clarify. I think Mr. Mattingly said before that Mr. Canning came in with a new
Revised master plan.
yes, and in it, there was okays on Washington Avenue for, I believe, up to, I don't know if it was 8 or 10 stories, I believe. And nothing's ever been done. These zones on Washington Avenue is like a checkerboard. It goes from here you can have 8, here you can't have it, then you can have the 8 again, then you can't have it. But about 10 years ago, we approved an 8-story apartment building on Washington Avenue by the zoning board, which just never got built yet. And I understand they're supposed to come back before us because they want to give a revised site plan, because they want to bring it down 1 floor. But still, the application hasn't been made yet. That's just, now the other thing that Victor Mafucci said, I believe in order for you to designate, and I may be wrong, possible, but in order for you to designate an area in need of redevelopment, I believe one of the requirements is you have to declare it blighted. Am I correct or am I not correct?
There are certain statutory standards that have to be met.
Yeah, and one of them is that you have to declare the area blighted by the
There
planning board.
are a variety of statutory standards.
I'm just using the word blighted because he objected to the word blighted, so I believe it has to be designated that.
I don't think it has to be in there anymore.
Oh, okay.
I also said I'm not an expert.
Anthony Rizzo, Fairview Place. I just wanted to say that it's a great start to the website. We believe, what is your name again?
Mr. Sheldon.
Mr. Sheldon, awesome stuff. Thank you. I just probably wanted to ask about, why is the navigation so large, I guess, and why is there a little X button to close it out? I didn't know if that was necessary or if there's a way to probably just maybe clean that up, but I was gonna bring up that you guys are in a weird order. Probably should be organized, so I do like.
That was changed. I'll talk to you after the meeting. I changed that.
That's great, but it was a great start, thank you for that. And I was just wondering if we do get public participation, will there be a moderator so we don't have trolls, or what's called an internet troll, with someone just posting junk and jargon onto the site so to make sure it stays professional?
No one can post to the website without authorization.
Okay, great. Then we're done, all right.
I believe
And
it's
I will
going
have,
to,
We're talking internally.
internally, not public participation, the general public will be the employee population.
Okay.
The interim township manager, Kevin Esposito, would have to authorize different staff members in the town hall.
Okay, that's a good sign.
Then I would have to give them access.
All right, it sounded like it was a forum.
No,
I
no,
feel it,
no,
I was like, oh, we're careful.
There's enough. NJ.com is enough.
Yeah, right, exactly, that trash is. And as I promised, I would get a report for, or gather all that information about the drug courts. But I talked about, I'm still in the middle of gathering everything around, so I'll have that to you by the end of the month or beginning of March. Other than that, thank you.
No, Florence.
She's always asking me to speak.
You're asking her?
Okay, well, you're done talking your millions of dollars, so I have an item to bring up. As a trustee of the Rent Leveling Board, you did get in your packages the memo from Rosemary. We do need an alternate member who is a homeowner. And we did have an alternate tenant appointed who never showed up to be sworn in, never attended a meeting after, so we'd like that person to be taken off and get a new alternate tenant and a new alternate homeowner.
All right.
And also, as far as our, well, first of all, I want to also bring out, we don't bring in millions, but as you can see,
Bring in a good buck.
we are a very active board. We brought in $28,830 last year.
Yeah.
And, Rosemary's done a great job with it. And before people were getting away with getting off of rent control, we were bringing in a lot more money. And now, since May, we did make changes that were approved, insertions that had to be put in different places in our ordinance. And I would like the board to finally give us an answer. Are we going to get an updated printed ordinance? Because, if certain things come up, the way some of the things are written, and we have a case, would they apply when we have new things that we've changed and we've never gotten an updated ordinance on this? So can we just finally have a memo from this council as to what's going to happen? Are we going to get an updated printed ordinance with the changes in it that were made? And if you still don't have the changes, Rosemary, our secretary of the trust, the rent board, can give them to you.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got it, so ask her to send it to us.
You've had a number of memos put in your folders, and we've never gotten a reply on any of our changes, and they are important. So, all right, well, I'll get off that, but Michael Sheldon, I want to say I really got through your website the other night. It's really classy and really very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as far as the comparison with this project, that I came in on the end of it for Jersey City is actually two cities now. I worked there for years. You've got the rich now and you've got the poor. You go all along the river, you see your high rises. Go further back and see what you have. We don't want that in Belleville. We don't want two cities, the rich and the poor. Now, if I decided I wanted to give up my home and rent, I probably couldn't touch the rent in any one of those buildings. I'd have to go to the poor section of Jersey City. So that's another thing there to deal with that. And as far as the DPW, I do want to compliment them on the job that they did. That very first storm where everybody said, oh, we didn't get the big storm. I was very happy we didn't get it. They did a terrific job because everything was off the street, in the driveways, where it belonged. We had no big accidents, no kind of big fires or anything like that. So that was a good thing for us. They really got it cleaned up the way it should have been done. Because the next storms after, when the people didn't move, you saw the difference. I think that's it, but, okay, just please let us get an answer for the rent board and a couple of new alternate people on that board. People that will attend meetings.
Mark, people actually that can go on the board, we put them on the board, they don't show up, we remove them. You have the same problem with the library board, isn't a couple of members not been there for a few months?
No, well, yeah, but you know the reason for that, I won't even go into that.
Then you should
Because we had a divided
change your
board there.
bylaws and say after 3 meetings, if they don't show up, they're off.
But right now, we're reorganizing on the board, and we're doing a good job on the library board, we really are. We're
Just
working
cancel
hard
the
at it.
sandwiches.
And you'll see the changes. You like those sandwiches, but we
Yes,
cut
they're
them out in
excellent.
half,
I'll
so
be
you
there,
can't get any
I'll
the
be there
next
next
meeting.
Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring my plastic
You're
bags.
invited. Thank you.
Make a motion, close public hearing?
Second.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo? Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg? Yes. Mayor Kimball?
Make a motion, move the consent agenda.
Second.
I want to pull number,
You can't,
seven.
9 and 10.
What?
You want 9 and 10?
Well, I want 7 first, and 9, and 10.
7, 9, and 10?
7, 9, and 10.
Okay.
Before the consent agenda.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg? Yes. Mayor Kimball?
Move resolution number 7. Murphy, or Kevin.
Yeah. You want a second on that?
Yeah, well, I moved, so somebody
Okay,
second,
second,
I
second.
still want to do that. Can we add e-checks on that? I was talking to Mildred Crump in North, and she said besides taking credit cards and the other thing, they also take e-checks.
You should use your check.
Well, we already take online checks.
Oh, online you
Yeah,
can
we
pay?
already take on, people who do online banking traditionally will send a check through their bank via mail.
But I mean, what we're talking about is you can actually go on
And your check.
and you enter your check, your routing number,
Routing
and your
number.
check. That's what you want, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
e-checks.
I will check with the software vendor to provide software to the tax
All right,
collector's
if we
office.
do that, we can put another one on. Okay.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Longo?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelberg? Mayor Kimball?
Yes.
Move resolution 9. Hang on a second.
I'll second it.
I don't understand this resolution. We did cooperate when they came. They called, said they were coming, they wanted certain records, they got their records and all. I mean, there was no, it's not like the school board, I mean, we cooperated with everything they wanted. And we gave it to them. There's no reason for a resolution like this. I'm voting against it.
if I may address that particular resolution. First of all, unless the author of this is privy to information that I don't have, I am not aware of any ongoing corruption investigation in this township. And that's not how it was explained to me. And I believe that I received the first telephone call from the chief of that squad when he asked me to come to town hall along with the manager and the mayor. It appeared to me, and I don't have any superior information, that the investigation was somewhat focused. They received complete cooperation from everyone. And what further concerns me with this is that by implying that there is some part of an ongoing corruption investigation, it gives the town a black eye, quite frankly. I don't know what the thought process was with regard to that. I myself sat with the director of that squad and his chief assistant, Rob Grady, both of whom I've had dealings with before on major cases. And the atmosphere, Mayor Kimball was present, Mr. Esposito was present. The atmosphere, in my judgment, was certainly not a hostile one or anything else that would give rise to describing their warrant for records as an ongoing corruption investigation. Now, with regard to people cooperating, we did. That's why I was there. But when you want to make it a policy, I have to say, Mr. Longo, I wouldn't threaten anybody's job if they were a target of an investigation or were being considered and put their job on the line to make them cooperate in an area where maybe they don't want to cooperate. And I think that's a line that you can't cross over. I'm very well aware that certain employees, if they are asked to cooperate and they don't, they can be immediately suspended. And that's generally police officers, although there is a statute covering other employees. But it's submitted to a vote. Anybody that thinks I do not have any information right now. If you have different information, maybe you can tell us. But with regard to what we were asked, I believe that they received their information. They have a wide variety of options open to them, including administrative action or just investigating something and determining that no further action is required.
Yeah. To my knowledge, the council's always cooperated with law enforcement and will continue to do so. I mean, it's been our standard practice. In fact, you can ask Solomon Dweck on that. Perhaps this was not the practice of the Board of Education, as evidenced by Mr. Longo's misguided resolution there. We don't need a resolution. This is something we do. Perhaps Mr. Longo would be telling us something different relative to the Belleville Board of Education's audit for 2014, because in that audit, which was done by the state of New Jersey, we have about 4.6 million reasons to be complaining and understand why something's gone on here. As of June 30th, 2014, the auditor noted a $3,712,426 general fund operating deficit. Approximately 90 budget line items were overexpended. General fund budget appropriations were overexpended $4,636,201. I mean, that's an amazing dollar amount. 31 disbursements totaling $2,143,608 were paid without supporting invoice or documentation. People were paid without the board receiving a bill. That amazes me. How do you do that? 20 disbursements were made with purchase orders that were dated differently than the invoices. Page 123, the district's bank account was in an overdraft position of $1,365,369. Page 124, a lease for $1,950,000 and another lease for $1,025,000 for a roofing project were never recorded in the district's accounting records. That $1.9 million was part of a resolution passed by Mr. Longo after the budget had gone down, the people had voted down that budget. In addition, payments were made directly to the vendors for these accounts. Well, that's my question. You have a chance to respond, Joe. You can respond.
I'm just asking.
Mr. Longo, you feel this does not warrant a resolution for further investigation. You voted no on that, Joe.
You're wrong, Mr.
No, you voted no on that. Fishing expedition on the part of Essex County to take this DPW down. I see $4.6 million worth of reasons why we should do this. And I see another $20,000 worth of memory sticks. But we're all asking what happened to them. What about the call you made to the township? Yeah, I don't have enough. $4.6 million and probably another $5 million.
I voted to take no part on that.
Joe, it's despicable what's happening on the board.
Did he cooperate with the prosecutors about the Board of Ed? He was the president.
We still have.
I'm going to listen to the advice of our attorney.
He's got some nerve, the big hero.
Well, Joe, I know you said you took no point, but to me that's like a no vote.
But it's not a no vote.
Well, to me it's like a no vote.
Okay.
It was two of the council
But it's not
people
like
that voted no.
Right, but
Or
it's
took
not
no
no.
vote.
It's take
Well, then
no
you should
vote.
have stood up and voted yes. That all these
I
illegal
took no
things that are
vote.
being, they should be investigated by.
And again, what does this have to do with the resolution on the table?
Anything? I don't have to talk about the resolution.
I'm just asking.
I don't have to talk, I can talk whatever I
There's a
want.
resolution
Yeah,
on the
it looks like you want to put this up, but you're ducking an investigation that should have taken place on the Board of Education.
I'm not ducking him, the Board of Education.
It's amazing to me how the Essex County Prosecutor's Office comes running up here when we gave them so much information on the Board of Education. Nothing has been done yet, but they come running up here for this. I'm just wondering what's going on down there, or the Attorney General's office. I'm wondering what's happening there. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Cosarelli?
As per advice of our attorney, no.
Kennedy?
As advice of myself, no.
Waldo?
Yes.
Nattari?
No.
Robel?
No.
Strumelob Burke? Yes. Mayor Kibble?
No.
Resolution introduced.
Resolution number 10.
Mayor, if that can be pulled for discussion, there are some items in that I'm going to ask to go back into private or possibly take an action. There are some,
Good.
there are some things in that contract. I know Mr. Revelle can't vote on this at all.
What, you want to table?
What do you want to do with it?
I'm sorry?
What do you want to do with it, Tom?
Well, let's try to get it done tonight. I just want to make,
I mean, the manager was in negotiations with us. I mean, it's the same contract that's been there for years. Why did?
there are, if we can go into private, Mayor, I'd appreciate that.
I make a motion, we go into private.
Well, we're gonna take action.
Yeah? Anybody go second?
Councilmember Cosarelli?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Strumelob?
Yes.
Nattari?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Strumelob Burke?
Hey, Steve,
You gotta step out, then we're gonna go back into
did you see
public.
where my cousin got the Purple Heart? He was a hero. Yes, we want to get results yet.
The table the police contract. Just, you know, they're still taking up the spots in the streets. That reverse 9/11 did nothing. I mean, you ride around, they got cones and chairs and everything all over the place. That's it.
Joe?
Yeah, I got two quick things here. I'd like us to sponsor, I talked to Kevin a little bit about this, a resolution to the St. Mary and St. Mercurius Coptic Church, extending them our heartfelt sympathies and support of the lost 21 members of the Coptic Christian community murdered by ISIS in Libya. In the last 30 days, we've lost 2 veterans in this town. And I would ask people to pray for these 2 guys. Patrick Henry Rudden was VHS class of 1968. He served with the U.S. Army in Vietnam and Cambodia in 1969 and 1971. He was part of a long-range reconnaissance patrol, otherwise known as LRP. He was a 2-time Bronze Star recipient, as well as a great trumpeter and a lover of animals. The other one was John, or we call him Jack Tully, who was a resident of Hill Street, who served in the U.S. Marines during the Lebanon War, the invasion of Grenada, and the siege of Beirut. Please pray for them. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.